Baseball Umpires podcast for umpires by an umpire. We're more than just balls and strikes and outs and saves. Listen in for tips, rule interpretations, equipment and attire reviews, interviews with umpires of all levels, and some funny stories that might come up every time out on the baseball field. If you're new to the field as an umpire or a seasoned vet in the world of umpiring, then this is the podcast for you. Hey Blue, the Umpire Podcast, is part of the 1420 Sports Bar group of podcasts on the Belly Up Network. Hey Blue, the Umpire Podcast for umpires by an umpire for this, what day are we even in here? It's April the 3rd, I think we're into now, Mr. Matt Ben. I don't even know what month we're doing all these bloody shows all the time. Today, the Umpire Show is brought to you by Caldera Lab and CalderaLab.com. Use promo code 1420LAB for 20% off of their men's skincare products today. Joined once again on the show by fellow umpire and member of the Southern Alberta Umpire Association, Matt Ben. Matt, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Still kind of recovering from my ankle surgery, but hoping to be ready to go on the 15th here for Canadian college baseball. So, well,
yeah, they had that Lethbridge team had quite the weekend out in the Okanagan. I mean, we're not supposed to be cheering for teams at all or looking at that, but I saw that they won 3 out of 4 out there, and that's kind of they have a pretty good team. Their team can pitch a little bit, so that helps a lot. Last week we kind of finished up our clinics, part of the season with the Little League clinic a week and a half ago, whatever it is now, with a bunch of we had about 40 kids out there and a few adults, which was nice to see. But we got to thinking a little bit and talking after a couple of we had adult beverage afterwards, and we were having a discussion about how you have to grow the game, grow umpiring a little bit, and how baseball, maybe not right across the world, but I think it is a bit of a problem. How it's you got guys who go to these clinics and then they're left for their own way about them and throughout the season, and they never really get looked at again. And sometimes they don't get looked at again for 2 or 3 years. People say that there's an umpire shortage, and I get it, but there has to be some accountability, not just on umpire, because people complain so much about parents and coaches yelling, but I think it's a lot of stuff has to do with umpires just not getting better, and that's why things happen. And then associations, not umpire associations, but baseball associations not growing umpiring, and that's more of a reason why, in my eyes, why there is a lack of umpires.
Yeah, from my point of view, like I played baseball for a long time, like we've talked about before, and I kind of just got started going in umpiring, and when I started, I didn't really know where to stand. I knew where an out and a safe was, I knew what a ball and strike was, but I didn't know where to stand on the field. I didn't know what my rotations were, and the only way I learned and got better was from people coming to watch, and trusted people that I knew were giving me good advice, and were, as a group or as a umpire group as a whole, I don't think, at least in North America, we're not doing a good enough job for these kids at younger levels. You say all the time, they come to this 8-hour clinic and then they leave, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess I got to go do that now. But
yeah, and the thing is, like, we've like in that 8-hour clinic, because you got a lot of kids who are like, if you had, there's, like I said, there was 40 of them there last week, and if 10 of them end up doing some games this summer, that's a pretty decent number, 25% retention, which it might be a high number, but you just know that some kids were there because their parents wanted to get rid of them for the day, and that's just the way things are, right? And yeah, you hope that you get some more out of them. You hope some that end up doing something, and the ones that do end up doing something, and I don't think as a whole throughout North America, from what you hear, that they're not given enough mentorship after the fact and after they're done with it. And that's not and it's not so much on like umpire association, but I think it's on the baseball associations more so, because we are stretched pretty thin, because like we still like to do games and go make a couple bucks ourselves, but I don't think the baseball associations do themselves much of a favor by trying to develop umpires. They're so busy trying to develop coaches and players, and there's so many different teams and everything else. That's part of the reason why there's a shortage of umpires. And another problem that they got is there's just so many damn teams popping up everywhere. There's just more tournaments, more games, and everything else. So they always seem to forget that that you need umpires to do these games. And I really believe that that's a big thing, that the accountability at the upper levels, that we don't get enough umpires. It's just the way things are.
Yeah, I heard a stat this winter from our provincial supervisor, Brandon Strock. He said last year in Central Alberta, so basically the Red Deer region, 50% of the games only had one umpire. And it's just wild to me. Like all the people that live in Red Deer and in that area, and they can't. And to the point of what you just said, there's just more and more teams popping up. Like this team that we had here last weekend that played at PBA.
Yeah.
That's a brand new academy this year that wasn't there last year. So now they're going to have another 25 game spring. So where are the umpires to fill those games as well? So yeah.
Like, and it starts at the top, and if these kids and these men, and then some of the older gentlemen we have out, if they don't get the proper learning, and then and like I said, you can only get so much information into a kid or into anyone's head in an 8-hour day, because a lot of kids are just worried about what's for lunch. Once they have their Gatorade and their pizza after lunch, that's it. They're running around and they don't care anymore. So you can only get so much information to these kids. It's a lot of stuff to get in, like I said, but the way that we kind of just say, okay, you're an umpire now and see you later. But there's got to be some accountability, more so on some of the younger kids too. But like once they do leave these clinics and they do go out and do games, it's kind of up to them, because we don't have home games. We're our own home team, and we have to kind of start to do things for ourselves a little bit. And there's so many learning tools out there that, yes, Baseball Canada has, and yes, that Little League has, and whoever else has these things. And there's a ton of YouTube content out there and stupid podcasts like this where you can learn a bunch. People have to take some accountability for themselves once they do decide to umpire for the year, and not just blame parents and blame coaches for getting yelled at, because you know what? You know who doesn't get yelled at? Guys who make right calls. You're going to make mistakes, but the guys who don't get in shit, they're the guys who are in position and are working hard out there. So there has to be a little bit more holding umpires more accountable for their actions on the field. What's your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. For me, I'm treating it like I played. A coach, if I struck out looking strike 3 on the outside corner, that was on me. That wasn't on a coach. That wasn't on a fan. That wasn't on the umpire. That was on me. And I treat umpiring a lot of the same way. I think it just, with the generations, how it's went, everyone's a lot softer and everyone feels a lot more entitled. So when you go out there and tell them that they did a bad job, it's not that you're attacking them. You're just stating out the obvious. And that person, whoever's on the receiving end of that, especially if they're let's just say an experienced umpire, you need to wear it a bit. To be honest with you, I know we're trying to get away of people yelling and screaming and blah blah blah. But if I make a mistake, that coach is going to get his one chance to give it to me, and then that's going to be it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not an automatic thing. And I think the more that you and myself, at least in this area, get out and watch these guys, like I've been at the park every weekend, trying to catch some innings, and you obviously you've been there, you've been on the field, and
yeah.
And I talked to Cam today about it, and he goes like, "Thank you for coming, like just thanks for being there, because it helps me out." And I wasn't easy on him either, and neither were you. You did the evaluation. We're honest, and we are expecting you to take that criticism and put it into your game. So
yeah, and I think the way about doing it too, that might get lost with some people, and not that I'm perfect by any means when I go out and do games. Like, there's mistakes that I make, and there's no getting around that. But I try to mask some things with working hard and being in position and the like, and that can kind of put the smoke and mirrors behind a baseball game. So it's one of those things. But I think with the way an evaluator, they can't just say you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. You got to mix it up a little bit, and say you did this right and did this right as well, because otherwise you're going to lose a herd of guys. And we talk about not wanting hat fillers out there, but we still need bodies. And I think we need to really start spending a little more time on guys that want to get better. That's kind of the biggest thing. And then guys who spent the time. This is probably right across North America. Like, I know they had their the Tri-State Elite Umpire Association. They had their graduation just recently out there in New Jersey, and they got guys that are umpires now and making pretty good dough doing it. The thing is, we have to start spending some more time on guys who want to do it, and the guys who want to improve, and maybe not worry so much about guys who are like, well, I've been doing it for 30 years. Well, sometimes you haven't been doing it right for 30 years, right? And that's one thing we really have to do throughout baseball and throughout the umpiring game is spend more time on people who want to do it, and not force people to try to learn. Because if guys don't want to learn, they're not going to get better.
No, and we had our little 2-man refresher there the other night, and I got 3 or 4 text messages after saying like, "Thanks for doing that." Um, Number one, I want to say that no matter if you're a big league umpire, if you're a minor league umpire, if you're an amateur umpire, you're not bigger than learning. I really want to make that point across because, like you said, we have these guys, older guys that have been doing it not necessarily right for a long time, and that's just because of the different feedback they have. But if you're going into a supervision or you're getting supervised, you know, don't don't act like you're bigger than the supervision. Okay, no matter what, no matter who's doing it, you take your supervision, you let the supervisor talk, you give some feedback. It's not about defending yourself or getting attacked. It's more purely about learning. So I don't know. It's hard for me because some people, they just think that they are right and they don't want to, like you said, get better. But for the most part, the guys that we're having now that are coming up, they're recognizing their mistakes, they're taking their supervisions, they're moving on, and I think it's going to be a good year for us. I think in this area. So
Yeah, like it's funny how like and you do have to have a certain delivery to it in a certain time frame because there are situations that arise every game where maybe your evaluation didn't go and your game didn't go so well, or your partner made a mistake, or you made a mistake, and no one said anything to you for because you don't want to have to dole out a hurt feelings report afterwards as well, right? So it's kind of that thing. There's one thing that we were discussing a little bit after the game the other night, and I don't know what other associations across because we got a lot of people listening right across the United States to this goofy little show we do every once in a while. I don't know what they got for their, like, 'cause a lot of guys just dress in a parking lot, right out of the trunk of their cars, and some like most places do have dressing rooms for the guys. But there's one thing that we were talking about that me and Tyler Malacca were talking about, that maybe after a game to maybe have the dressing room door closed a little bit, maybe just the evaluator and that's it in there, maybe after a game, or nobody after a game, and let the two guys hash it out over an adult beverage or whatever it may be, or a Diet Coke or whatever you're fancy and whatever you want to have. But have that conversation, have that time after a game, 10-15 minutes, to have that discussion of what went right, what went wrong. Because a lot of times, like I know around here, we get a lot of guys coming into the dressing room directly after the game to BS or whatever it may be, which is fine. But that's a time when you should be able to talk to somebody, and because the best time to tell somebody that they did something incorrectly or correctly is right after they did it, not 3 or 4 days later, because they won't remember what they were talking about, right? So that's one thing I think that we need to look at more so around here is dressing room access after a game. Like maybe just stay out, because most of the time the guys that are at the game, they might have had a couple of beverages in them already, and they might not be seeing something that they should, or they might be saying something a little loose lip because they wouldn't say otherwise. So that's one thing. I don't know what other associations have, if that's a rule, but I think that's something that here we got to maybe look at, and maybe right across the leagues that we do.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the other day of what is available to us right now where we can give kind of instant feedback to guys on the field, because sometimes these games are 3 hours long. You're not going to remember what happened in the second inning, but the supervisor has it written down. You know what I mean? So I was just kind of thinking, going through my head, like, is there a way we can? Because some of the games that we have going on right now are spring or fall games. There really is no meaning. We can send guys out like maybe an earpiece or some kind of walkie-talkie deal where if they get instant feedback right after the play happened. That way, I think it's going to sit a little bit better. Obviously, we're not going to be doing that in regular season games that people are playing for. But right now, in these kind of spring warm-up games, exhibition games, I'm just I don't know, racking my brain on how we can give some better instant feedback. And again, with that, you need to have people that are committed to going to watch and all that kind of stuff too. But it's going to help everyone out, I think. Instead of having someone standing there right beside you, it's trying to figure out ways, and technology is what it is now. So I'm sure
I think that's a good idea, Matt, because if you get a guy going on the field to say something, then everybody kind of knows that. Like, how do I word this? I'll sound like a complete dickhead. But if you tell maybe the coach ahead of the game that, okay, I'm going to be hanging around the field, but I don't want a person to be going on the field 4 or 5 times a game to say something, because even though, like you said, the games don't necessarily mean anything, quote unquote, that you you still don't want to have the guy feeling down about himself, and then the players or coaches looking at you a little bit with the side eye and saying, yeah, we know he's terrible, or yeah, he screwed that up. So you don't want to draw attention to it, right? It's like having a great big zit and putting Clearasil on it, and it just gets worse and worse looking as the day progresses.
Yeah, I mean, if it's only supposed to be a 2-umpire game, and then one of us shows up there to help a guy out, I don't want to be chasing the guy around on the bases, because then we have more people in the middle of the field, and it just doesn't look that way. So if we can get some kind of system where a guy just has maybe an earpiece in, and then that way you're not just giving negative feedback, but when they do something good, if they have a good pivot, if they do the rotation properly, you're giving that positive feedback too, so it can resonate in their brain like right instantly that they did it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like most guys like that we work with, we kind of have our way. We've been doing it for a few years, and it's that. And we're in general, we're in the position. But once in a while, you just kind of might float over to the middle to feel a little bit too much, or you might have like you said, your pivot might be a little too deep and the like, or you might want to square up the bag a little bit more, and you could say something after a game, and it might be something. But there's a lot of things that people don't see that throughout the game. You won't remember. Like you just won't. I mean, there's 500 things going on in the baseball game at once. It's the big plays you remember, the interference and the balk and whatever it might be. I think it's a good idea to maybe have a headset out there for these games and teach people, because it can't hurt. With the accountability thing that we see, and this one kind of makes me a little bit crazy. It gets the negative part of the great art of umpiring is when you get ejections of young, especially young players, when an older gentleman makes a call and it's completely wrong. And I've seen it before. You've seen it before when you were a player too as well. But when guys have ejections because they made a bad call, that drives me absolutely batshit crazy. Because you wonder why. Because I could have had one like last year. I did a U14 or 15, whatever it was. All these they'll like there's majors, minors, this, that. That's up to me. Like I'm old, but there was a U whatever, and this kid, he drew a line in the sand, and I should have ejected him. I could have ejected him very easily, right? And I didn't, because I knew that little Billy's parents spent how much money and everything else, and like for the game, the hotels, the this, that, and the other. So I kind of went over to the coach between not that inning but was the inning afterwards, and I said, listen, maybe tell little Billy he shouldn't be doing that, because anybody else probably would have thrown him out of the game. But here's the money that was spent, and he's not going to learn anything. And all of a sudden, I'm going to be the bad guy because he didn't think the pitch was a strike. I mean, it very well could have been where he pointed. It wasn't, but it's one of those things. And but you see a lot of umpires who make a bad call, and they hear something that they thought they heard from a player or from a coach, and then they run the kid or they run the coach, and then they look even worse, because it drives me nuts when umpires make a bad call, like a bad call, and they throw a guy out. Like they shouldn't be a thing, and you see it all over more amateur baseball. Actually, you see it in that debacle with Real Muto last week, when he didn't get the ball into the catcher's glove. The umpire didn't get the ball into Real Muto's glove, and he threw him out of the game. That's a bad look, man. That is such a bad look. What's
a disaster? It's an absolute disaster. Everyone is like, I remember my first year doing our collegiate league here, and I had a senior umpire tell me, if you mess up or whatever, and a coach comes out and asks you about it, don't ever admit that you mess up. And I said, why? And he goes, because now he can use that against you later on down the line. And I said, but if I just tell him that I messed it up, that's me recognizing that I messed it up, and he's getting his vindication that he was right. So why would he want to keep using that against me? Like, I don't know. I don't understand it. If a coach or a player comes out and they're upset because you messed up a call, own it. Absolutely own it. And if it goes past the line, then you do what you need to do. But for the most part, hopefully these adult coaches and these college coaches, and that's all they want to hear, is that you acknowledge that you did it wrong. And I don't know. I keep boasting this to everyone in our association, but I've been now doing baseball for 5 years. I have 0 ejections. Have I messed up calls? 1,000,000%. Okay, there's been calls that I'm like, even I was like, oh no, that was not great. But whether that was in the moment, it didn't matter, or or whatever, I have always admitted when I was wrong. And I think some people are a little bit too proud out there, to be 100% honest with you.
And there's
And
ways you can do it, especially like with like if you miss a pitch or if the guy gives you a sideways look and he looks back at you a little bit, you don't need to bark back at the guy.
no,
Like it's usually like if a guy looks back at you, he's usually right. Like it's
yeah,
just he's like, ooh, you missed that one, or a catcher might say something. The catch and your catcher can be your best friend throughout a game. And I usually like if it's a pitch like the second out of an inning and I call a pitch out and it wasn't in his eyes after that half at bat or whatever it might be, I'll say, hey, where'd you have that one? Like, where did you have that? 'Cause here's what I had. Or
yeah,
if it was blatant, I'll do it that at like when that at bat's done, I'll
yeah.
ask him, did you have that a strike? Did you have that? Did you have that? Where do you have that? And then
And it goes,
good, and then you have a good relationship with the other team, because then that catcher is going to go to the bench and he's going to say to the coach, and you're going to have a better thing, because a coach won't. I don't like, especially higher levels. I don't think a coach will hold that against you, or a manager, as they like to be called, or I don't think they'll hold that against you later on when
no,
you're accountable for what it got. I don't think you'll say, yeah, you missed that one in the third too. Jimmy told me you did. I
that's
don't
right.
think they're ever going to say that.
Yeah,
They would rather you hear that you made a mistake, and that, I mean, to each their own, and there's different things. And I to a man, I can't remember who I had on this show a while ago, but coaches are actually a lot more tame than they were 25, 30 years ago.
yeah,
Those people back then, they were ruthless, and they got that from TV when you had guys like Billy Martin and Lou Piniella and the like, and those guys were absolute animals, and the college coaches were just as bad or worse. Right? These
yeah.
guys nowadays, they get it a little bit more, and they're taught sensitivity training. It's just a different game. And I think if you're truthful, to not to a fault, but if you're truthful with guys and hold yourself accountable, you're gonna have a much more successful game out there.
And we have, like, we've talked about, like, the old acknowledge, warn, eject, everything.
Yeah.
Like Jake said, if I'm yelling at you, the worst thing that you can do is look at me in the dugout, because that just makes me more mad. Just hear it. And then if it gets to a point, then do what you need to do. But for the most part, these coaches are trying, well, maybe not this summer, but these college coaches and stuff, they're trying to win every ball game. And if they can gain any kind of advantage by barking a little bit from the dugout, it doesn't mean they're personally attacking you. It just means that they're trying to get whatever the edge they can get to win. And we need to understand that a little bit better as umpires. Having that game management, game knowledge. They're not there just to yell at you. There's a distinct reason. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, if they get mad enough or you blow something up, then yeah, they're there to get ejected too. There's that side of it too. But we have to understand as umpires, what the time is, where you're at in the game, all that kind of stuff. It goes into understanding the game, your game knowledge, and just becoming a better umpire. And I don't know. I keep saying not be soft, but you have to take it a little bit sometimes. And I know that's not where we want to go with this umpiring, especially at the younger levels. But for us senior umpires that are doing higher levels of baseball, the game means more. It truly does, and we have to be better.
And it starts at the top down. Even at the higher levels, it starts at the top down, teaching guys the right way. Guys coming up to whatever league it might be, and then the guys that are doing U13 for the first time, or whatever it might be on a larger field. It's up to the top guys down to go and help out, and maybe do a game or two with these guys and say, okay, I'm on the field doing this, doing that, and then they'll see it. And then like I said, holding guys accountable to go out there and, okay, yep, you need to read the rule book, because we're not going to sit in a classroom for 3 days and read and interpret rules, because you know what, you're not going to get anything out of that, like nothing. We will have clinics and things that will infuse rules into, but you're not going to pick up everything. It's something you got to do on your own if you're going to be an umpire, and you're going to put on the goofy blue shirt or the black shirt and the goofy gray pants and everything else and go out there. That's up to you to make yourself better, because you're your own team out there, and most of the time you don't even know who your partner is sometimes, and it's up to you to go out there and get better and learn things properly. It's up to you to make sure you're not late. It's up to you to make sure that your shoes look good and everything else, because that's all part of it. No one's doing that for you. We don't have locker room attendants who take care of that stuff for us, right? So it's important, if you want to have a decent decent game and a decent season. It's more up to each personal umpire to get out there and make sure that they set themselves up to succeed. And a lot of these, I can't think of one baseball organization that wouldn't want umpires to get better. I don't understand why more places don't have people seeing pitches throughout the year, because these kids are throwing all year long. They're taking live BP all year long. There's batting practice in 3 or 4 different places around Lethbridge all year long, and I'm sure it's that way all over North America. And why more associations, not umpire associations, aren't going to the umpires and saying, "Hey, do you guys want to maybe get a little bit better? We're throwing pitches today. Just come see some pitches." And I think that the associations are a bit to blame for this umpire shortage, because guys just aren't getting better, so they quit.
Well, and we keep kind of boosting ourselves, but if we can do it in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada in February, there's no reason why you can't be watching pitches in Texas in October. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just a Canada us issue. It's across the world, well, the world really now. Baseball's so broad, but there's no excuse anymore. And really, how much effort did it take for us to do it?
Two text messages to Hubka. Hey, right. I think Hubka actually came to us at one point. He goes, "Hey, we're going to be throwing live BP starting next week. You guys want to come? Come for a few." 100%.
That's right.
It was that easy. And that's what I'm talking about. Like they want it to grow, because games are better when the umpires are better, right? And if the umpires aren't going out there and they're just showing up for a paycheck, we'll talk about that in half a second too. And when guys show up for a paycheck and they're out there for 3 hours and it's hell for every second of it, well, there's a reason, because you didn't try to get better. Like, you didn't even put the effort in to get better. Like, I know people have lives and there's stuff outside of baseball and everything else, but if you aren't trying to get better, that's on you. That's not on anybody else. Like I said earlier on, there is so much content because most guys are tattooed to their phone all day, every day anyway. So why not watch a YouTube video about God knows what? Because there's hundreds and hundreds of them for umpires.
Well, and to be honest, like, I got to give you credit. You did most of the work for us, but you went out, you found John in New Jersey, you found these guys across the country, and that wasn't stuff that you were promoting. That stuff was already there. Like, it was easy to find. If you really wanted to find something, that's got to be on you. Like we said at our clinic, we can teach you where to stand and where to go, but we can't teach you a strike zone. We can't teach you all the rules. Like you said, as an umpire, if you want to do it at a high level and you want to do it well, you have to take some kind of your own personal responsibility to get better. And that's not a cop-out by the senior guys, because we're going to try and show up. We're going to try and help you out. But there's aspects of umpiring that you have to get better at by yourself. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, well, like we talked about on Friday night a little bit there, we had the 2-man refresher thing, and we said go here, go there, and I want to talk about something else about that a little bit when we get a chance here. But at the end of it, we spoke about that we got a pretty decent raise, right? With our. It was something that was long overdue that didn't happen around here, and it's right across baseball everywhere that umpires are not compensated very well for what's going on. It's getting better now because of the shortage of officials, but that's not a big deal. But the problem that I got with not getting a raise, because we like more money, obviously, it's the guys just expect it without putting in any more work. And that's something that we really have to look at, is that if you're just getting more money because you're willing to go out there, it's not going to worth it, because it doesn't matter. They will take that money away. If it's not worth their bang for their buck, the Baseball Association will say, you know what? You guys each got X amount of dollars more last year, and it was actually worse because you just got more bodies out there. It didn't help anything, right? And like some money can go to umpire education, everything else that's got to happen, but the basically not just going out because we're getting more money and adding umpires because they're getting more, that's a bad look, because this could go a little sideways. Guys will want to do more because they're getting more cash, right?
Yeah, but more, yeah. And I can see where the other side comes from. It's like, why do you guys want more money? Why are we paying these guys more and they're doing the same job? We did everything we could as an association to improve people. We gave everyone the opportunity, right? I understand that work comes into play, family comes into play, all that kind of stuff. But how can we justify getting a raise if we're not providing a better service? It's nothing. It's just a life thing. It's not even umpiring. You know 100%. What I mean? Like, how is someone going to pay me more money if I do the same job year in, year out? I better
Yeah.
keep improving and doing a better job. You know what I mean? So
And that's just the thing with umpiring. It's one of those things. Like once you start getting a little bit older, you don't get better most of the time, right? Like you like in most careers and most jobs that you have, when you get a little bit older, you get a little more knowledge and everything else. Get to if you're pushing a pencil or you're working as a pipe fitter, you usually get a little bit better as at your job. But when you become an umpire, you get a little bit slower. Your vision gets a little bit worse. So just because you're older doesn't make you any better. So it's a little you got to work a little bit harder and getting guys that just want the more dollars. Like we might this I'm sure this is everywhere, but what we're talking about what we have around here, a lot of guys who didn't come out all year long, you're like, well, why? Like it was. I wouldn't say it was disheartening, I guess, a little bit when guys didn't come out to try to do because it was free and it was every second week for 2 hours on a Saturday. Yeah, I like work and everything else, but you can't tell me that every person on the roster couldn't come out for a couple hours once, once a
yeah,
month or whatever
I,
whatever it might be.
I think for us, for some of the people too, they umpired for whatever 5 months out of the year. Once October hits and it's -30 and snowing outside, they might not want to come. It's the last thing on their mind. But it goes to the point of, listen, if we want to provide a better service and we want to get more money, we need to do it. It's going to be a year-round thing. When I was 12 years old, I played baseball year-round in Manitoba. Like I got better 12 months of the year. The umpires got better 4 months a year.
And then
So
they're bad the first 2 months because they forgot what they were doing the time before, right? And see,
that's right. So
the first pitch you see all season long is an 85 mile an hour slider. You're going to miss it.
that's right.
That's just
So
fact, right?
yeah. So I mean, I think like the guys in the big leagues, they're doing their umpire stuff in January. They're doing it in February. Right before spring training. But they get a spring training to mess stuff up. You know what I mean? Like we don't get a spring training when we get jump into games. These games matter, so we need to find ways to keep getting better. 12 months out of the year, 10 months out of the year, type of thing.
Yeah, that's one thing I kind of wanted to like, and you hear that a lot in amateur, like you were, and like even you said, like the games don't quote unquote matter because of the way that they're just club teams or whatever it might be, and they're kind of just playing, and they have these courtesy runners and blah blah blah, which I don't much like. I don't. I think if you're going to play the game, you should play it right, not have unlimited substitutions, and if you're going to play, you should play to win, not just compete. But that's another story for another day. But the games matter to somebody, right? So it's our responsibility as officials to go out there and put in the best foot forward and do the best that we can, because we're at the end of the day, and I said it to the young kids, and I said it to some of our older people who come to our clinic, we're the only ones that are actually getting paid. Right. And so we're kind of expected to be the only professionals out there. And like I said, that one at bat might mean something to that kid. And that one at bat might be the only at bat he got because his team's down 14-2 in the fifth. And so he's a bench guy. He might only get that one chance to go out there. And if we kick the shit out of a call just because we're bored or don't want to be there anymore, or in a bad position, that's a bad look. And that's why a lot of parents and coaches do have a sour taste for officials in right across sport, but just in baseball specifically.
Just because we're quote unquote amateur umpires doesn't mean that we can lose the professionalism of umpiring. We need to be. I know I said that they might not matter, but it matters to someone.
Yeah.
It matters to some kid out there. When Vauxhall is playing in March against PBA, some kids might be vying for a spot for the rest of the year to start. You know what I mean? So that, like you said, that 14-10 pitch in the seventh inning of a 4-hour baseball game, it matters to him. So, for me, it's just like, I don't know. It drives me nuts. Like I treat it the way I treat everything in my life, my job. I'm there for a reason. Someone's paying me to be here. I better be the best I can be. And I wish people would take it more seriously.
Well, and now so much like, because now everything is streamed somewhere. So now you got scouts that might be watching the game, because I can't see why a college scout from Arizona State's going to make his way up here. But every game is streamed. So like you said, every at bat matters to those kids, and so that's why it's our job to make sure we're putting ourselves in the position to succeed and giving these kids a proper chance. Yeah, games do get out of hand sometimes, and there is some game management. We'll talk about maybe on another show coming through here, but there is some ways you can get around doing that, and people, some older dogs like myself, we know a few tricks of trade that can do that. But in general, like we got to make sure these umpires, young and old, are held accountable on a daily basis, and we're putting them in a position to succeed. But at the end of the day, they, like I said, they really, really have to look after themselves and make sure that they're doing stuff on their free time to make sure that they're getting better. And that includes showing up a little bit early. That includes to having a pregame meeting with your partner, making sure you're on the same page. That includes maybe talking during the game, and then, like I said, having that meeting after a game and making sure that, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And having those tough conversations with nobody around, because I think a lot of guys, and that's we'll get to that in half a second. That's where a lot of guys don't want to, because there is some tough conversation got to happen. And umpires tend to find a way to try to one up each other all the time. They try to outsmart each other all the time, and you have sometimes. And this is throughout. I mean, it's life in general, but because it's an umpire show, we're going to talk about umpiring. There's a lot of guys who are always trying to prove somebody else wrong to try to improve their hat size for whatever reason, and I don't understand it. They always want, well, this rules this and this rules that. What would you do here? And they're always trying to pick somebody. We were talking the other night about fly ball coverage, and yes, it's important to get it right, but we end up spending 25 minutes because it's a pop fly to center field. Just call the fucking guy out. Like, who cares who makes that call? And it's when umpires do that, that's why people don't want to talk, right? Because it's this conversation, and there are guys who are always trying to outsmart each other in the umpire world, and there's guys who look down their nose at you. So that's why a lot of guys don't want to speak, and that's why a lot of guys end up just saying, you know what, this isn't for me.
Yeah, and just the whole approach, the whole attitude towards it is such an important aspect of it. You know, if I have an older guy that I'm working with, and we have our pregame meeting, chances are, if he wants to do something a certain way, I'm going to do it that way. And, you know, no one is above it, and no one is too proud to not have that conversation. I guarantee you tonight in Kansas City, before the Jays play the Royals, those four guys that are going to be in the field are talking about coverages and everything. So if they can do it at the highest level, why aren't we doing it at our U15 game? You know, with a partner we might not have worked with ever before.
And going out in the field together and making sure you're on time and having that conversation prior to it, it just makes things a lot better, and not being lazy, because it just, and that's one of the things that starts to drive me a little bit crazy, is when you see guys walking and not doing their job properly, and then they wonder why they're not in position and they're getting yelled at. If you're doing your job, if you're trying hard, if you're trying hard out there, coaches aren't going to give you shit. If you kick a call, you might hear some beaking, but you don't listen for it. You might hear something, it'll go away. So if you're doing stuff to hold yourself accountable and hold your partner accountable, it makes it so much better for everybody. And it's got to happen throughout baseball. Like I said, to open the show up, we complain a lot about parents, we complain a lot about coaches, and you hear these horror stories. But I don't think the lack of umpires is because of parents and all because of coaches. I think a lot of it has to do with the higher ups not trickling down and helping out young people. And I think that's more of the problem than it is the odd parent and coach. Yes, there is some that are out of their freaking minds, but it's right from the top down where we're not assisting these guys, and right from whatever level of baseball, Alberta, Canada, whatever, we're not giving the younger guys or even some mid-range guys enough assistance. You see them once in March, see you again in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's if you can make it, right?
And to be honest, I think we're doing a good job now. You know, we have people in positions outside of umpiring that can afford to put some time into it. But at the same time, like we're committed to doing it this year. We're committed to going out. We're committed to doing these things, seeing these guys that are coming up, seeing young kids in Little League. You know, we're committed to doing it. And I think if we can all commit as a kind of umpire brotherhood across North America, you know, it's going to be better. You know, everyone talks about all the bad things that happened to that poor guy that happened in there in New Orleans. You know, that's something that's bigger than umpiring. That's bigger than the game. What happened there?
Well, let's talk about that. Like, I'm sure everybody who watches listens to this show, they probably know what happened there down in New Orleans. I can't remember the guy's name. It doesn't much matter a whole bunch right now, but it won't matter to him and his family. But it's. Everybody saw that pitch that the night before. It was on a Friday night or a Thursday, and everybody because we had a clinic on that Saturday morning, or a game, I think it was, and everybody's like, "Holy fuck! Did you see those two calls? Like, Jesus!" But you didn't take a pause, read, and react we just all reacted, right?
Yeah.
And there's three sides to every story, and nobody thought about the other two sides. We just saw those two calls that were atrocious, but then it came out, I think, on Thursday last week, where he told the story. He goes, it was racist. It was a bad environment. I just had to get out of there. So this is the only way I knew how. The game was 7-2 or whatever it was. I found two pitches that and then the way everybody's acting towards him, there was racist undertones. I got out, right?
And that had nothing to do with parents. That had nothing to do with how much you get paid. That had nothing to do with how much you prepare. That was something that was completely out of taken out of perspective, and everyone lost their mind about it. So there is some things that we cannot control. There is 100% there is, but we are trying to do as much as we can to control our environment, make sure everyone's prepared, and do the best we can. And I think it's really unfortunate that people, they just jump to conclusions, like you said. Like that guy.
Umpires around the world were like, "What the fuck just happened there?"
Yeah,
I know we were, right?
And then as soon as that video came out and we all watched it, everyone understood. It was like, you know what? I get it. I know that was wrong of him to do, to quote unquote,
kick it to get out of it.
But at the same time, put yourself in his position. You would have done the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's crazy how there's like, I've had that to like a lot of times, how there's three sides to every story. Hey, and people always forget the other two. It's instant reaction. That's why you got to do the pause, read, react like you're supposed to in baseball and umpire. We should probably maybe do that in life a lot more. It might make things a lot easier.
I think another, and this is another side point. I just want to get in this quick. If you broadcast baseball or if you broadcast hockey and you never played and you never officiated before, you take an officiating course before you broadcast the game. 100%.
Yeah, that's probably not the worst idea, to have guys saying, okay, this is why there's a reason why this is called this way, and there's a flow to a game, and there's a way things work in general. Because it's, if you don't do it that way, then you're gonna have an absolute train wreck. No, Matt, good show today. I think we touched on some bases that had to be touched on within the umpiring world. It's not like the whole thing isn't just outs and safes and balls and strikes, because you can teach those, but it's the stuff that people have to get out there, and they got to do themselves if they're going to do this and want to get any better. You can't just expect to show up on the field and put on the gray pants and your black jacket and expect to be a great umpire. You got to work at it, and you get so many guys who don't work at it, and they wonder why they get yelled at. And it's really easy, right? It's an easy fix. Work harder, you won't get yelled at.
At the highest levels, 25% of the game is outs and safes and strikes and balls. 75% of the game is just game management, knowing the situation, what the score is, what inning you're in, the two teams going into it, their records, all of that. It's wearing the clothes and calling the balls and strikes. That gets you halfway, and really that's all we can do as people are instructing and trying to help you guys out. The rest of it, you guys have to learn on your own. Period.
And work with your partner, and work with your association, and work with yourself, and because you get so many guys who do try to be bigger than the game, and they become umpire guy, and no one likes that guy. The ump show guy, don't be that guy. It doesn't do anybody any good. And just try to help the game, because at the end of the day, we're just out there to have some fun and make a couple extra bucks here and there. And you get so many. And if one guy's committed to working hard and the other guy isn't, that's a tough game. That's a tough game on say my end to do it. You're like, well, what if that guy's not doing it? Now I got to work twice as hard, and this guy's going to kick a call, and it's in your head, right? Because he's not in position. And like I said, if you work hard, good things usually happen to you on the baseball field.
If you're that umpire guy, and if you don't know that you're that guy, you're probably that guy. But if you're that guy, we need you to be better. Period. And that's not just in our situation, because there's one or two of those guys in every community across North America. You guys need to be better, because they're probably the root of the problem.
That's 100%, 150% true. Anyways, that's the Hey Blue podcast for this week. Matt, thanks for joining. How is the wheel feeling, by the way?
It's good. Like I said, I'm hoping I'm good for the 15th. I'm starting to walk around, no crutches, and getting some more weight on it. I'm going up the stairs now without crutches. So I got about 6 physio appointments in 4 days coming up. So hopefully get it feeling good for the weekend. Just another shout out this weekend. We have our first conference series. So if you 4 guys will be out there, I'm probably going to come watch.
If the snow's off the ground.
Yeah. I know they tarp the field, so the infield should be good at least, but it's good. It's getting going here. we're looking forward to the season, and
Yep.
and thanks for everyone for tuning in and listening to Brent talk his thing, and it's going really well. So we're looking forward to it.
Perfect. No, thanks for coming on, and we'll have to do it again sometime. We'll talk about some other topic that hits out throughout the season. Thank you for coming on. We'll talk to you again. I'll see you tomorrow. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast. 4 beer with sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.